What if your own mind is playing tricks on you, making you believe you're fully aware and rational, when in reality, you're deeply influenced by hidden biases and subtle psychological effects? What if the clarity you feel in your thoughts and decisions is actually an elaborate illusion, crafted by the very way your brain processes information? In this video, we're diving into 10 psychological illusions that make you think you're perfectly awake and rational, exposing the clever shortcuts your brain takes, the cognitive biases that blind you, and the subtle influences that shape your perception without your knowledge. From believing you're smarter than average to misremembering events and falling for persuasive traps, get ready to question the very fabric of your conscious awareness. And trust me, the number one illusion on this list is so pervasive, its exposure will fundamentally change how you view your own thoughts and decisions every single day. You're about to explore the fascinating quirks of human cognition, the subtle art of deception, and the surprising ways your brain can mislead itself. Can you imagine consistently overestimating your own abilities, thinking you're better than most people at almost everything? Stick around, because I'm going to reveal how this common bias creates a false sense of competence. Before we expose these mental deceptions, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, share this with a friend who thinks they're always right, and if you haven't already, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on more mind-bending content from 360 World. And I want to hear from you. Which of these psychological illusions have you caught yourself falling for or seen in others? Drop your insights in the comments below. 10. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Unaware of your incompetence. What if the less you know about a topic, the more confident you are in your knowledge, mistakenly believing you're an expert when you're actually incompetent? Imagine someone with very little skill in a particular area, yet they loudly assert their opinions, completely unaware of their own limitations. This isn't just arrogance. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where individuals with low ability in a task overestimate their competence, while highly competent individuals tend to underestimate theirs, creating an illusion of mastery where none exists. How can ignorance breed such confidence? The Dunning-Kruger effect posits that people with low ability in a certain area lack the metacognitive skills to accurately assess their own performance. They don't know what they don't know, leading to an inflated sense of expertise. Conversely, highly competent individuals tend to underestimate their abilities, assuming tasks that are easy for them are also easy for others. This creates a fascinating paradox where confidence often inversely correlates with actual skill, leading to poor decisions based on an unfounded sense of certainty. Understanding this bias is crucial for genuine self-improvement and avoiding the pitfalls of overconfidence, showing how easily our brains can create an illusion of competence. Overestimating your own smarts. What hidden gaps in your knowledge might you be blissfully unaware of? Let me know in the comments. And brace yourself, because our next illusion tricks you into thinking you already knew what was going to happen. 9. Hindsight bias. The I knew it all along phenomenon. Imagine an event happens, and suddenly, you feel like you always knew it was going to turn out that way, despite lacking actual foresight. What if your brain tricks you into believing that past events were more predictable than they truly were? creating an illusion of superior judgment. This isn't just a convenient memory. Hindsight bias, often called the "I knew it all along" phenomenon, is a cognitive bias where, after an event has occurred, we perceive it as having been more predictable than it actually was, leading to a false sense of insight. How does your brain rewrite the past to make you feel smarter? Hindsight bias occurs because once an outcome is known, our brains unconsciously reconstruct our past knowledge and beliefs to align with that outcome. We selectively recall information that supports the known result and downplay contradictory information. This makes the event seem inevitable rather than the complex, uncertain reality it was beforehand. It can lead to overconfidence in our own predictive abilities and a tendency to unfairly judge those who didn't foresee the outcome. This bias makes us believe we are more perceptive and insightful than we actually are, giving us a false sense of certainty about the past and potentially hindering our ability to learn from true uncertainty. Rewriting the past to feel like a genius. What moments in history do you now feel you knew all along? Don't go anywhere, because our next illusion subtly influences your decisions without your knowledge. 8. Framing effect. Words shaping your reality. What if the way information is presented to you, the specific words chosen, or the context provided, subtly dictates how you interpret that information, making you accept a particular viewpoint without even realizing you're being influenced? Imagine being told a product is 90% fat-free instead of 10% fat, and suddenly it seems much healthier, even though it's the exact same product. This isn't just marketing. Framing is a fundamental psychological phenomenon where the presentation of information profoundly impacts how it is perceived, understood, and acted upon, making it the most pervasive and powerful tool of manipulation in communication. How does language subtly control your thoughts? Framing is the way information is presented, OFTE, and highlighting certain aspects while downplaying others to influence how an audience perceives an issue. It leverages cognitive biases to subtly steer your interpretation and decision-making. Examples include focusing on gain versus loss, using emotionally loaded language, or setting a specific context for information. For instance, a political issue can be framed as a matter of freedom or security, leading people to different conclusions based on the framing rather than the core facts. Because it works by shaping your initial perception, often unconsciously, it's incredibly powerful and difficult to resist, proving how subtle linguistic choices can profoundly manipulate our understanding of reality. Your reality subtly shaped by words. What unspoken influences are guiding your opinions right now? Up next, a chilling effect that makes you agree to things you wouldn't normally. 7. Foot in the door technique. Small favors, big compliance. What if agreeing to a tiny, seemingly insignificant request makes you much more likely to agree to a much larger, more substantial request later on? Imagine being asked to sign a petition, then later being asked for a large donation and feeling compelled to say yes, even if you're hesitant. This isn't just consistency. The foot in the door technique is a powerful psychological phenomenon where securing initial compliance with a small request significantly increases the likelihood of compliance with a subsequent, larger request, a clever way to gain major influence through minor concessions. How does a small yes lead to a bigger one? The foot in the door technique works by capitalizing on our desire for self-consistency. Once you've agreed to a small request, you tend to see yourself as a compliant or helpful person, or as someone who supports that cause or individual. This internal self-perception then makes it more difficult to say no to a subsequent larger request, as doing so would contradict your newly established self-image. It's a common tactic used in sales, fundraising, and persuasion, where initial, low-cost commitments gradually lead to much larger ones. It proves how our need for internal consistency can be subtly manipulated to lead us down a path of increasing compliance, starting with the simplest of agreements. A tiny crack in the door, leading to wide-open compliance. What small agreements are subtly influencing your bigger decisions? Don't go anywhere, because our next illusion tricks you into believing everyone sees things your way. 6. False consensus effect. Everyone thinks like me. Have you ever genuinely believed that your opinions, beliefs, and even habits are more common and widely shared by others than they actually are? Imagine assuming that most people agree with your political views, or that everyone finds the same things funny, when in reality, your perspective might be quite niche. This isn't just being agreeable. The false consensus effect is a cognitive bias where we tend to overestimate the extent to which our own beliefs, values, and behaviors are typical of others, creating an illusion of widespread agreement. How does your brain convince you that everyone thinks like you? The false consensus effect occurs because our brains naturally seek out and prefer information that confirms our existing beliefs. We also tend to associate with people who share similar views, reinforcing this illusion. When faced with ambiguity, we project our own beliefs onto others, assuming they think the same way. This leads to an overestimation of the commonness of our own perspective, making us believe our views are more universal than they are. This bias can lead to misunderstandings, overconfidence in our arguments, and surprise when others disagree, showing how our brains create an illusion of shared reality. Everyone's secretly agreeing with you. What unique quirks or opinions do you mistakenly believe are universally shared? Coming up next, a bizarre trick that makes you attribute success to yourself and failure to others. 5. Self-serving bias. Taking credit, shifting blame. What if your brain automatically takes credit for your successes, attributing them to your intelligence or hard work, but blames external factors or bad luck for your failures? Imagine acing a test and thinking, "I'm so smart," but failing another and concluding, "The teacher made the test too hard." This isn't just human nature. Self-serving bias is a cognitive distortion where individuals attribute positive outcomes to their own character and negative outcomes to external factors, creating an illusion of consistent competence and protecting self-esteem. How does your brain always make you look good? Self-serving bias is a common cognitive bias that protects our self-esteem. When good things happen, we attribute them to our abilities, effort, or personality. When bad things happen, we blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck. This allows us to maintain a positive self-image and feel competent even when evidence might suggest otherwise. While it helps preserve self-esteem, it can also hinder personal growth by preventing us from taking responsibility for mistakes and learning from them. This bias creates an illusion of consistent success and externalizes flaws, making us less aware of our own role in negative outcomes. Always the hero, never the villain. What hidden biases are subtly protecting your ego every day? Don't go anywhere, because our next illusion makes you believe you have more control than you do. 4. Illusion of control. Thinking you influence chance. Have you ever felt like you can influence random outcomes, like rolling dice harder for a higher number, or pressing the elevator button repeatedly to make it come faster? Imagine believing your actions have an impact on events that are purely based on chance or external forces, feeling a subtle sense of agency where none exists. This isn't just superstition. The illusion of control is a cognitive bias where individuals overestimate their own influence over external events, particularly random or uncontrollable ones, creating a false sense of mastery over their environment. How does your brain trick you into thinking you're in charge of luck? The illusion of control arises from our innate desire for agency and predictability. We tend to associate our actions with outcomes, even when there's no causal link. This bias is often seen in gambling or in everyday actions where we perform rituals for desired outcomes. It makes us feel more secure and less vulnerable to randomness. While it can boost confidence, it can also lead to poor decision-making by overestimating our ability to mitigate risks or predict outcomes, showing how our brains create a false sense of mastery over an unpredictable world. Controlling luck with your thoughts. What random events do you secretly believe you can influence? Now, prepare for the top 3, which delve into the most profound and unsettling psychological illusions that challenge your perception of consciousness. The next one is about your memory. 3. Misinformation effect. Rewriting your memories. Could your own memories, the very foundation of your personal history, be subtly altered and rewritten by new information without you even realizing it? Imagine confidently recalling an event, only for later details, even false ones, to seamlessly integrate into your recollection, making you believe they were always there. This isn't just forgetting. The misinformation effect is a psychological phenomenon where a person's recall of episodic memories becomes less accurate because of post-event information, subtly altering the very narrative of your past and creating false memories. How easily can your mind be tricked into rewriting its own history? The misinformation effect occurs when exposure to misleading information after an event subtly distorts a person's memory of that event. This has been famously demonstrated in studies where eyewitnesses were shown misleading questions or post-event narratives. For example, asking, "How fast were the cars going when they smashed?" versus "when they hit?" can alter a witness's memory of the car's speed and even whether they remember seeing broken glass. Our memories are not like perfect video recordings. They are reconstructive and highly malleable. This means that our perception of the past is far more fragile and susceptible to external influence than we often realize, highlighting how effortlessly our brains can create an illusion of accurate historical recall. Your memories, subtly rewritten by outside influence. What past events do you remember differently than they truly happened? Up next, a chilling illusion about your sensory experience. 2. Change blindness, missing obvious shifts in your vision. What if obvious changes in your visual environment, even major ones, can occur right before your eyes, and you remain completely unaware of them? Imagine a person you're talking to suddenly changing their clothes, or a large object appearing in a scene, and you simply don't notice it, even though you're looking right at it. This isn't just distraction. Change blindness is a remarkable perceptual phenomenon where large changes in a visual stimulus go unnoticed by the observer, demonstrating that our conscious perception is far more selective and less comprehensive than we think. How can we miss something so obvious? Change blindness reveals that our brains don't process every piece of visual information in our field of view. Instead, we focus our attention on what we deem relevant, and our brains fill in the rest based on expectations or recent memory. When a change occurs during a brief interruption, our brains often fail to update the mental representation, leading us to miss even very obvious alterations. Classic experiments involve a person being swapped out mid-conversation, or objects disappearing from a scene without the observer noticing. This phenomenon proves that our conscious visual experience is an elaborate construction, not a perfect snapshot of reality, and that our brains actively filter out vast amounts of information, creating an illusion of complete awareness while often missing critical details. Major changes happening right before your eyes, unnoticed. What obvious shifts in your daily life are you completely blind to? And now for the number 1 ultimate psychological illusion, something that fundamentally questions your entire conscious experience. This is the one that changes everything. 1. The illusion of conscious will. Are you really in control? What if your conscious feeling of making a decision, of freely choosing an action, is actually an illusion, and your brain has already initiated the action milliseconds before you even become aware of your choice? Imagine believing you are the author of your thoughts and movements, only to discover that your conscious will might just be a retrospective interpretation of what your unconscious brain has already decided. This isn't just philosophical debate. The illusion of conscious will, supported by groundbreaking neuroscience experiments, suggests that our subjective experience of free will might be a powerful trick of the brain, fundamentally challenging the very nature of human agency and the feeling of being awake and in control. Are you truly in control of your actions, or is your brain making decisions for you? Groundbreaking experiments by neuroscientist Benjamin Libet in the 1980s showed that a specific brain activity related to movement appears in the brain milliseconds before a person consciously decides to move. More recent studies using fMRI have extended this to seconds before a free choice is made. These findings suggest that our conscious awareness of making a decision might actually be a retrospective interpretation or a veto power over an action already initiated by our unconscious brain. It doesn't necessarily eliminate free will entirely, but profoundly challenges the intuitive feeling that our conscious self is the direct and sole initiator of every action. This illusion, if true, means that our subjective experience of conscious control is a powerful trick of the mind, making us feel like we are awake and in charge. even if the underlying mechanisms of decision-making are operating at a level beyond our immediate awareness. It's the ultimate illusion of control over our own minds. Your conscious will, a powerful trick of the brain. It's the grandest illusion, isn't it? If these psychological illusions that make you think you're awake left you speechless, then you absolutely have to check out our next video right here, where we explore even more bizarre human behaviors that defy explanation. You won't want to miss it. And remember, if you only scrolled to the end of this video, you missed out on the startling reality of the Dunning-Kruger effect and the perplexing nature of hindsight bias. Definitely go back and watch those parts. Before you go, hit that like button one last time. Share this video with anyone who needs to be reminded of the incredible, complex workings of their own mind. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join the 360 World community, and let's keep exploring the mind's most profound and unsettling secrets together. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and keep an eye out for those subtle illusions.